How's it going, everybody, and welcome to the Midnight Channel. Today, finally, we're going to be reviewing Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster. Huge thanks to Atlas and Sega, who were able, nice to provide me with a review code for this game. I really do appreciate the opportunity. But let's go ahead and jump right into the review here. This is a game that I have, and a fair disclaimer, I have a lot of nostalgia for. I played this game back in 2006, 2007, around the time frame when I just first got into the Shin Megami Tensei Persona series. So it is a game that I hold dear to my heart. I have a lot of nostalgia for this game. I played this game many times before because I have a lot of nostalgia. It's really hard for me sometimes to kind of just get the rose-colored glasses and say, this is something that may be kind of like bad or anything like that, because at the same time there's a lot of excitement. I'm really like, I've been waiting for this remaster for ages. In fact, this just came out of nowhere for me. Like, as somebody that has been waiting for this kind of stuff for a long time, it's a huge surprise that we even get a port or a remaster or anything like that for these kind of games, because I honestly, a lot of people have mentioned this before, but it does feel sometimes like the Shin Megami Tensei series is ignored by Atlas. So in a sense, I am really happy that we got this. So how is this remaster? The way that I want to approach this is both as somebody that is a huge fan, as well as somebody that is a kind of looking for as a new perspective. Kind of like a new person, a newcomer just coming into the series, looking at this as your first Shin Megami Tensei. So let's go ahead and jump into the story. So the story of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. I'm gonna say Nocturne from now on, so I don't say the whole title every time. It's the story about a individual, demi-fiend, whoever you want to call it. You get to name in the beginning of the game, and he just is just out with his friends. He's gonna go meet up with his teacher. It's some kind of school event or something like that, and the apocalypse happens. You're in the rooftop, you meet your teacher, and the apocalypse just completely wiped everything out, and you kind of wake up becoming a demon. You became a demon yourself, and you go into the wasteland and just find everything is destroyed. Demons are everywhere. You're kind of just trying to get a sense of what's going on here. You need to find your teacher, you need to find your friends, you need to kind of get a sense of what happened and where to go from here. From there on, you meet all kinds of really interesting characters. Not only do you meet the person that created you and kind of made you into a demon, but you also meet all these different personalities, whether it's the people that you know now, your friends, and what their decisions entail to in this new world, as far as other people and other demons that you meet along the way, things, different factions that kind of have developed since the apocalypse, and kind of what their choices are, because this new world is a brand new world without an entity kind of to decide where to go from. So now the role of your protagonist, as well as everybody else in this new world, is kind of find a sense and purpose of what the new world is gonna be like. It is a really interesting story, and it's a really interesting way to storytell this kind of stuff. If you're not a fan of Shin Megami Tensei, if you never played a game like this, it may be a little bit hard for you to kind of get into it, because the game tells a story in a really archaic way. This is a really lonely game. You're gonna walk around for hours before you kind of meet somebody or talk to somebody. A lot of the NPCs will just give you a one or two liners. You just kind of move on into the next thing or everything, and the series just moves forward at a very slow pace at times. Sometimes it just kicks in gears. The farther you go into the story, the faster it's just gonna go and overcome and everything. But at first, the first few hours are very lonely. You're probably gonna be a little kind of like not have a sense of where to go from here. I do strongly recommend you to pay attention to certain things. You're going to talk to maybe an NPC, or maybe somebody who's going to say something like, hey, maybe you should go east or north or whatever, and you're kind of like, well, that doesn't really help a whole lot, and the map doesn't really gonna tell you much either. So you kind of there's a lot of open worldness to this, opposed to this. This is a PlayStation 2 game, so you kind of have to look at it in that perspective. Like, this is a game from the early 2000s, so you kind of have to get into that as you move forward with this. This is not a remake, so they don't really fix any of this kind of stuff. This is just the way that the game is made, and not necessarily for bad or worse. I just feel like the way that they approach certain things does feel sometimes a little bit antiquated, but sometimes in a sense it does feel like a classic. It does feel like a lot of the mechanicals or mechanics that you've seen from other Shin Megami Tensei games or other Persona games are very much ingrained into here. However, the storytelling, it is in a different perspective. It is in a specific kind of way that you may or may not like. I feel like this is gonna be kind of a point where some people are probably not gonna get really into because of the storytelling. So how about the gameplay? I think a lot of people have heard. If you heard anything about Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, you've probably heard about how hard this game is. And for lack of a better sense, this game, it can be hard, but it also can be easy. It just really depends on how you approach it. This game really focuses and emphasizes on learning the mechanics. There's a lot of different mechanics that you can learn in the game, such as buffs and debuffs. This game approaches the turn-based RPG, and it does put a lot of emphasis on learning how to approach the different things, whether it's recruiting demons, fusing the demons, going back and forth, exploring. There's a lot of exploration you can do. There's a lot of places that you don't necessarily need to go to, but they will definitely help you along the way. There's areas where you can find specific demons that may help you. There may be specific fusions that you need to do. So there's a lot of encouraging as far as like doing exploration, fusing, getting more demons. There is a lot of freedom as well as far as to where to go and what to do and everything. So that's where the open worldness that I mentioned earlier does come in. Although this is not a full-on Ubisoft open world kind of game, you do have an open map where you can just go from point A to point B as long as you have the open world where you can go in a specific part of the map or something. You're definitely free to go and back around. There is a lot of going back and forth between different areas. You will see this as you move forward along, where you're gonna go from a specific area to maybe another area that you were before. Maybe you have to go back to a hospital. Maybe you have to go to Ginza. You have to go to different areas a couple times. It is again part of the game because it does have to get you to a story. So sometimes when you're exploring around or you're going doing particular part of the story, it's going to tell you, hey, you should go back to the other place or whatever. So there is a lot of going back and forth, and just be aware. A lot of the back and forth can get tiring at times. I know there are a lot of people that are not into this kind of games because of the back and forth, because of the type of map that it is. It is not as direct as something like Persona, where I seen like you do walk around with your two legs and your character in a map. This was just a more traditional Shin Megami Tensei game where you have a world map and there's a little character that it's a blue character that just moves around. It's not like the whole like 3D models and you're walking around all the different areas. There's a lot of in between where you're just literally walking in the desert doing nothing other than fighting and everything. So keep that in mind. However, the game itself is really fun. I do find a lot of fun into the gameplay itself. I always find the RPGs, particularly turn-based RPG, to be kind of like my spot where I'm just kind of relaxing and I'm just kind of like, I find every single fight that I fight in like maybe I can experiment to learn new buffs or new ways to approach the battle and everything like that. And as you move forward and you find every boss that kind of encounter is kind of like a new way to kind of approach things, whether it's the weaknesses or the buffs and debuffs, or maybe some particular boss that is weak to ailments or something like that. So you always want to try a different approach, and I do like that the game does encourage you to try new approaches, because new approaches need new ways to see the gameplay and everything. So the gameplay to me always feels fresh. It always feels like there's some other things that I can learn from it, and luckily there's all these different ways you can build your character and your stats and everything, where you can pretty much get a couple of different playing runs and everything. There's all these different endings you can unlock as well. So there's a lot of replayability to this game, although this is not a really long game. Shin Megami Tensei games are known for being long. However, Nocturne isn't particularly long. You can probably finish in about 40 to 60 hours, but you will definitely get a lot out of your game overall. Well, moving into my final piece, and this is going to be the performance. Now, for me, the performance is going to be a tricky one, because it is interesting to see a PlayStation 2 game now made into this scenario where it's coming out on the PlayStation 4 and on the Switch, because we do have a lot of examples from PlayStation games coming into a lot of different consoles. For example, you can have Resident Evil 4, which is kind of like one of the ones that you can instantly think that it's been on pretty much every console. You have something like Skyrim that is being on like the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, like all these different systems and everything. And then you see something like this. This isn't a particularly a very good port. And fair disclosure, while I was writing this review and everything, there was a update that dropped the very day that I'm like editing this and everything. So some of this stuff may or may not have changed now with the version that you're playing, because again, there was an update, but it didn't give me enough time to kind of go back and be like, okay, well, how much did that update change? And Atlas did not specify what the fixtures be, like whether it's like bugs issues or like what kind of bugs did they fix, or it just says bugs on test. It doesn't really says what specifically they fix, but I want to go in detail as far as what I experienced in my playthrough, which is not a lot, by the way. I didn't experience much bugs, although I have heard from other people that they have experienced things like frame drops or some other random bugs that they may experience. I personally have not experienced much of the bugs department, but I did experience one weird thing, which you're gonna look at the screen now, which is basically this flickering on the light. It's just a random times you'll be walking or something happens and there's some random flickering in this like this black flickering, and again, this happened from the very beginning of the game all the way up until the end of the game. So this was a constant thing. Sometimes it wasn't happening at all, sometimes it was constantly happening to the playthrough. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was fixed or not, but through my experience, I do want to mention there was this weird flickering. I played this game on the PS4, which I expected to have almost no issues. I'm sorry, on the PS5. Although I did try it on the PS4 and there was the same kind of performance or anything like that. The game does perform at 30 FPS. Some people have said that they wanted this to be a 60 FPS. It's a PlayStation 2 game. I don't think it really matters. But some people expect this to run at like 4K and everything. Unfortunately, this is 1080p with the 30 FPS cap, and it doesn't necessarily need more than that. Again, it's a PlayStation 2 game. It doesn't seem like they did a lot of reconstruction where it's merited to have that 4K 60 FPS. It does feel like pretty much a PlayStation 2 game running on the PS5 or so. There's only so much that you can do on that to make it look like a newer game. It's still pretty much a PlayStation 2 game. There is some other aspects that people have mentioned, such as the compressed audio and it's that kind of stuff. Personally, I don't think it really matters when it comes to compressed audio, because most of the audio you hear nowadays is compressed, whether it's the audio that you hear through YouTube, the audio that you hear through Spotify, any like Netflix, all that audio that you hear most of like 98% of the time that you listen through is already compressed. So although some people have raised that as an issue, I don't necessarily think it's an issue, because you can't, normally you won't be able to hear it. It's until the higher pitches where you can actually hear a difference, and it's not like the soundtrack doesn't really allow for you to be able to be like, oh, there's such a huge difference. I'll be honest, there's not much of a difference when it comes to compressed audio, but it is there, and I do have to mention it so that you know about it. The final point on the audio system, though, that I do want to mention is it looks like all the audio is in one single track. So the loudness on the music is as loud as the audio on like the voice and everything like that. Again, I'm not sure what this is through COVID, because they have to record at home and everything like that. I did notice a similar issue in the Persona 5 Strikers game, where the audio on the voices was almost as loud at times as the music in the background. Again, I don't know if this came about because of COVID, where they had to record at home or something like that. So I'm not gonna fault them too much about it, but it's still a thing. Like every audio, whether it's like all the different sounds from like the menu and everything, and the audio and the music and everything, feels pretty much like it's all the same volume at the same sound thing, and that does kind of look like that. I personally don't like It does bother me sometimes, but the funny thing about it is there is only so much voice acting in this game, so it's not really gonna be like a big issue. But when you see it, it is noticeable. Anyway, that is pretty much in this review here. Just talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, how much I like the game. I personally love this game quite a bit. It is one of my favorite Shin Megami Tensei games. If you're new into the series, this is definitely a good way to kind of get into it. I personally will say that Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne is not particularly a hard game, but I do certainly recommend you to check it out. Whether you're a beginner, whether you're somebody that is already has the nostalgia, if you're somebody like me that has the nostalgia, you're instantly just gonna jump right into it. It is a fun game. There's a lot of mechanics, a lot of stuff that maybe a beginner you may kind of get into and everything. But as somebody that has been playing this game so many times, I'm like, yeah, like there may be some issues, but at the end of the day, I still did enjoy my experience with the game. There's nothing game breaking that stops you from enjoying the game or playing the game to its full capacity. And whether it's the debate or not, as far as like the pricing or not, that's really up to you and your own economical situation. I can't really tell you to buy or not to buy the game. But I personally did enjoy the game, and I do enjoy the experience of playing the game. So if you're a fan, if you're looking into it, definitely check it out. If you don't have the economical reasoning to buy the game, I totally understand that. It is at the end of the day your decision and kind of like how you feel about it. Personally, I would say if you cannot afford the game, you could probably wait for a sale. But if you're definitely a fan and you're somebody that is starting to get into the series, this is definitely a pickup for you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.